Hi, how is everybody doing? And welcome to the Young Brother of Soul podcast show. And guess what? It is me, your guy, the Young Brother of Soul. First and foremost, how about them birds? I want to give a shout out to my hometown team, the Philadelphia Eagles. They beat the Detroit Lions. Everybody kept saying the Lions was going to beat us. Well, they didn't. Well, then again, our defense played phenomenal. Yes, they did. Offense, we gotta do better with the play calling, man. This the play calling definitely has to get better if we go further in the playoffs. Come on, man. We got to do better. But defense played well. I love the way how the defense played. Yeah, love the way. Burging all day, burging all day. And I also didn't forget about the ones that want to be special guests on the Young Brother Soul podcast show. Bear with me, y'all. It's going to happen. I don't know when, but it will happen. All right? So I'm going to just leave it at that. Leave it at that. So, on today's episode of the Young Brother Soul podcast show, what I'm going to be talking about is NFL teams that relocated to another city. Now, before I go on with this, I want you to know that a lot of NFL teams have relocated. The reason why, well, you know what? I shouldn't just say NFL teams. A lot of sports, four major sports, as I should say: baseball, hockey, basketball, football. A lot of teams relocated to another city. The reason why they relocated to another city is because of the stadiums or arenas that they play in are outdated. Some of these stadiums are old. Now, yes, it costs a lot of money to renovate, but it costs even more to get a new stadium or arena, which is why I see a lot of owners try to get new stadiums or arenas because the old ones are outdated. Why continue to play in an outdated arena or a stadium where you could play in a brand new one? But first and foremost, if you try to renovate with it, that may be the best at the time. But if they don't come out with a deal, you'll be looking to see a new stadium or arena. But if they don't come out with that deal, you'll be looking into another city. Another reason why these sports teams relocate is because they have a lot of financial problems. Now, you wouldn't think, as much as these sports make a lot of money, some owners are in deep financial problems. Now, that is probably the reason why a lot of owners sell the team to new owners. And then, if you think about it, with the new owners, some of these teams in these four major sports, they actually succeed to be better. Yeah, if you think about it. And another reason why that teams relocate, especially in the NFL, they relocate to another city is because the largest cities, largest markets. If you think about it, some cities are bigger than the cities that they play in, but at that time, it was for the best. Now, before I go on with this list, as I should say, some of these teams moved to a different location for the better, and some of these moves were one of the most controversial moves in NFL history. A lot of fans are still hurt from their teams moving on to another city. Yeah, I would be too. That's like my hometown team, the Philadelphia Eagles. Whoa, wait a minute. Now I know some of y'all gonna be like, the Eagles ain't going nowhere. Yes, no, they're not going nowhere. I seriously doubt it because a lot of us Eagles fans would not have it. Okay, we would not have it. No, I don't see it happening. That would be a hurtful piece right there. And if they move on to another city, while our city is out with the football team, I will represent the new football team for the city of Philadelphia. But like I said, the Eagles not going nowhere, so I seriously doubt that they will ever relocate. So we have nothing to worry about. That will be the most hurtful thing in the city of Philadelphia. But like I said, we ain't got nothing to worry about, so we ain't going nowhere. So starting off on our list, that NFL teams that relocated. This is actually the second oldest team in the NFL, but they didn't always play in the city that they play in now. And this team is the Decatur Staleys, will relocate to the city of Chicago. Now, to be honest with you, and I'm going to keep it real with everybody, Decatur is actually another city in the state of Illinois, but it is not as big and popular as the city of Chicago. I mean, Chicago is the third largest city in America. Decatur has nowhere near the population that the city of Chicago has. So, yeah, that that yeah. So they were founded in the year 1919. That is until the year 1921. That's when they moved to the city of Chicago. The reason why they moved to Chicago is owner, founder, coach, legendary player or whatever, Papa Bear, George Hollis, stated that the reason why I'm moving this team to this city is because it's a bigger city, like I said, which it is. That is until the year 1922, where they changed their name to the Chicago Bears, which is a way better name than the Chicago or Decatur Staleys. Yeah, it definitely is a, a better name. I believe they won at least seven, eight, nine, maybe NFL championships, one Super Bowl in the city of Chicago. I'm surprised they only have one Super Bowl. You would think they would have more, especially because they have. Well, I'm gonna just I'm gonna just leave it at that. But yeah, that is the reason why the Decatur Staleys moved to Chicago, because Chicago is a bigger city than Decatur. Leave a comment if you think Chicago is a way better city than Decatur. Well, bigger. I'm gonna just leave it at that. Another team that relocated is the Portsmouth Spartans to the city of Detroit. Now, the Portsmouth Spartans were founded in 1928. Portsmouth is the city in Ohio. Okay, so we're just gonna leave it at that. They were only in the league for like 4 or 5 years. That is until 1934, the team would relocate to the city of Detroit, and they would become the Detroit Lions. Yeah, which is a way better name than Portsmouth Spartans. Now, the reason why they moved to Detroit is because of financial problems and the Great Depression. The Great Depression is one of the most greatest, or should I say, in history. That was a bad time, the Great Depression. But if you think about it, since they moved to Detroit in 1934, well, the Detroit Lions only have 4 NFL championships. They still don't have a Super Bowl. They ain't even playing the Super Bowl yet, but they're still the the first team to ever go 0-16 in 2008. I'm gonna just leave it at that. I'm sorry, Detroit Lions fans. I know y'all gonna be like, "Oh, why did you go there?" But I mean, they made it to 2 NFC Championship appearances, but still no Super Bowl. So yeah, yeah, yeah. But like I said, Detroit Lions is a way better name than Portsmouth Spartans. I'm sorry if you could pronounce the city and that city's name from Ohio, just correct me if I'm wrong. But yeah, and to be honest with you, the Detroit Lions have remained in Detroit, and they're still in Detroit. And of course, the Chicago Bears are still in Chicago, which I seriously doubt that they will ever be going anywhere. That's history right there, as they should say. No, it is history though. Another team that relocated is the Boston Redskins to Washington D.C. Now, the Boston Redskins were actually founded in 1932. They were actually called the Boston Braves. The reason why they changed the Redskins is because they had a baseball team by the name of the Boston Braves. So that's why they were like, well, there's already a baseball team by the name of the Boston Braves, so we're going to change it to Redskins. Well, believe it or not, they would relocate to Washington, D.C. in 1937 because there were no fan supports. I mean, I believe during that time, football wasn't as popular like baseball was in the 1930s because baseball, of course, been out the longest. But if you think about it, the Washington Redskins have remained and are still in Washington to this day. That is until the year 2022, where they changed their name to the Washington Commanders. Well, I'm not. I don't even think I'm going to go into detail with the name changing. So I'm gonna just leave it at that. Believe it or not, the Redskins only won two NFL championships. I would thought that they would win more than that because they've been in the league so long. But no. But they did win three Super Bowls. So yeah, they definitely did win three Super Bowls. But yeah, there were no fan supports. I mean, a baseball team and a football team, but with the same name. I mean, that happens quite a few times, to be honest with you. But yeah, I'm gonna just leave it at that. But yeah, the Redskins, or should I say Commanders, have remained in Washington since 1937. So, and they're still there. Are they going anywhere? Nah, I don't think so. No, I don't think so. No. Another team that relocated to another city is the Cleveland Rams to the city of Los Angeles. Now, the Rams, believe it or not, did not start in LA. They started in Cleveland. And believe it or not, they won the 1945 NFL championship. Then the next year, they moved to LA because the owners did not want to compete with the uprising, well, I shouldn't just say uprising, the powerful Cleveland Browns. They would have had two teams in Cleveland, but of course, during that time, the Browns were a way better team, not like they are now. So, yeah, sorry, Cleveland Browns fans. I know you guys are, well, Cleveland sucks anyway, so I'm going to just leave it at that. And not only that, they had a lot of financial problems too. But if you think about it, that was the best for the Rams. And they also had poor attendance too. You'd be surprised. A lot of teams put their effort into playing so hard and they still get poor attendance, which is another reason why teams relocate because of poor attendance. But to be honest with you, the Rams were not actually the first NFL team to play in LA. You also had the LA Buccaneers, not the same Tampa Bay Buccaneers. That's a different story. Well, the LA Buccaneers didn't play their games, their home games in LA. They would have to play in different cities. I don't know. That was just how the NFL was back in the day, man. Don't get me started. But the Rams actually played their home games in LA when they moved in 1946. Now, they didn't win the championship at the time or no Super Bowls before then. They did make it to a Super Bowl and a couple of NFC championships, but they lost. So, yeah. But yeah, the Rams didn't always start in LA. They started in Cleveland. You know what's crazy? Quite a few teams that relocated to LA, they didn't always start in LA. They just relocated. Like, when is there actually a team in LA that they found in LA, not relocated? But we'll talk about that another time. Yeah, we'll talk about that another time. Another team that relocated in the NFL is the Chicago Cardinals to the city of St. Louis. Now, the Chicago Cardinals, or should I say the Cardinals, are the oldest team in the NFL. They debuted back In 1898, well, it wasn't the NFL at that time. It was a different league. I forgot the name of it. Just bear with me. If y'all know what the football was, what it was called before the National Football League is, leave a comment. Let me know. Correct me if I'm wrong. But well, I said like I said, I didn't know. So yeah, yeah. The reason why they moved to St. Louis is because of poor attendance and financial struggles. Well, if you think about it, a lot of fans didn't really support Chicago Cardinals. More so, they supported the Chicago Bears. Of course, the Chicago Bears is a better team than the Chicago Cardinals, but the Cardinals did win an NFL championship in 1947. But they did not win the 1925 NFL championship. They were defeated by the Pottsville Maroons, which is one of the most controversial disciplines in NFL history. They gave the title to Chicago because the Maroons played an all-star game with Notre Dame College, and NFL wasn't having it. Back then, it was about the money. They didn't have that much money like they do now in the NFL. Well, Cardinals, yeah, you guys are cursed. So I'm gonna just leave it at that. But yeah, if you think about it, back in the day, baseball and football teams shared the same stadium. You get tired of sharing your same stadium with another team, especially with a different sport. You do, because you got to move this, you got to move that. But yeah, I'm gonna just leave it at that. They would move to St. Louis in 1960. Well, they made it to the playoffs quite a few times, but no Super Bowl wins. So yeah, yeah. Trust me, you're gonna hear like two teams that relocated, 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 relocated. So moving on, moving on. Another team that relocated is the Los Angeles Chargers to the city of San Diego. Now, the LA Chargers actually debuted in 1960. They moved to San Diego in 1961. Those were the AFL days. But you know what? I'm going to just leave that alone because later on during the list, you're going to hear another situation about that. So we're going to move on. Yes. Another team that relocated is the Dallas Texans to the city of Kansas City. Now, believe it or not, Dallas Cowgirls, but Cowboys were not the first team in the city of Dallas. It was the Dallas Texans. But they were in the AFL, American Football League, National Football League, okay? So they were there for only like 2 or 3 years. But owner, founder, would relocate to Kansas City because the NFL didn't actually or couldn't support two teams in the city of Dallas. Now, nowadays, you have two teams in the same city. But during that time, of course, money situation. But if you think about it, in 1963, that's when the Dallas Texans will move to Kansas City, but they would change their name to the Kansas City Chiefs. And believe it or not, since they moved to Kansas City, I believe they actually won 2 AFL championships and they won 4 Super Bowls. So maybe that was the better. But yeah, that is the reason why that they moved to Kansas City because the NFL couldn't support two teams in Dallas. Can you imagine if there was two teams in Dallas? I mean, not that I really care, but I couldn't. But which is quite understanding. That's why you move to another city. And look what the better outcome is. Dallas, Kansas City, 4, Dallas, 5. So yeah, yeah, yeah. Another team that relocated is the Oakland Raiders to the city of Los Angeles. Now, the Oakland Raiders were founded in 1960. They were definitely an AFL team. And believe it or not, they won two Super Bowls while they were in Oakland. Well, in 1982, they will relocate to the city of Los Angeles. The reason why is because owner, founder owner Al Davis wanted the LA Coliseum, excuse me, the Oakland Coliseum to renovate real good, even to have box seats, luxury seats, same thing. Well, I guess they couldn't come up with an agreement, so he moved the team to LA. And believe it or not, they actually won a Super Bowl a year after they relocated. They won Super Bowl 18. They defeated the Washington Redskins. Well, they just didn't defeat them. They blew them out 38-9. Marcus Allen had one of the most famous or greatest runs in Super Bowl history. And I believe he won Super Bowl MVP. Well, they did make it to the playoffs quite a few times, but that would be the last time that the Raiders would win a Super Bowl. But that was in the city of Los Angeles. If you think about it, the Oakland Coliseum Stadium, it is a old stadium. Okay? It is. And not only that is an old stadium, they share the stadium with the Oakland Athletics, the baseball team. Well, that's going to be another video about, baseball teams and NBA teams that relocated. Yeah. Yeah, we'll talk about that another time, though. Like I said, that's going to be another video. Well, like I said, the Oakland Coliseum Stadium is an old stadium, man. Like, it needed a lot of work to be done. Well, that's why they moved to LA. And they won another Super Bowl, which is the last time, like I said, they won a Super Bowl. So they will be there for quite some time. But we're going to go back to the Raiders a little later. Yeah. Now, this team or this relocation to me is the most controversial relocation of all time. Number one relocation. Number one controversial relocation to me of all time. To this day, fans are still hurt even though they got another team. I will never forget. I forgot where I was at, but I was talking to this elderly gentleman. Well, I'm going to get into that a little later. The Baltimore Colts to the city of Indianapolis. Now, the Baltimore Colts were actually founded in 1950. Well, that team dissolved because I don't know what happened, but they actually had different colors too. So green, I believe. I can't imagine them being green, but anyway, they were refounded in 1953. And believe it or not, I believe that the Colts actually won 3 or 4 NFL championships. Correct me if I'm wrong, but they did win a Super Bowl. They won Super Bowl 5. Well, if you think about it, well, I shouldn't say think about it. I did not know during that time owners can trade with another owner to own a football team. I didn't know you could do that. Like, I didn't know you can trade your NFL head coach to another team. I didn't know that would be possible. But anything's possible in the NFL, I guess. Well, Robert Irsay was actually the owner of the LA Rams. He traded with the Baltimore Colts owner, forgot his name, and he actually won Super Bowl 5 with the Colts. So Robert Irsay would get the Colts, and the old Baltimore Colts owner would get the Rams. So, we're just going to leave it at that. Well, after Super Bowl 5, well, you know what? Then again, that was actually quite after Super Bowl 5. Well, anyway, while Robert Irsay owned the team, he definitely wanted a new football stadium for the Colts. Memorial Stadium. It was an old stadium. It was very outdated. The seats were messed up. I see why he wanted the new stadium or try to renovate, but I don't think renovating was going to be the best thing for that stadium because it was so old. Well, he tried his best to get a new stadium for the Colts. I guess the city of Baltimore wasn't working with him, so he was getting other offers from teams, or should I say cities, to get a new stadium better market, and I guess bigger fans. Well, that would change. In 1984, the Baltimore Colts would relocate to the city of Indianapolis. But the way how they did it was so controversial. They had Mayfair trucks pack up their stuff and move to Indianapolis overnight. I believe the cops may have stopped one of the trucks, but it was already too late. So, in the 1984 season, the Indianapolis Colts would debut, and Baltimore, Baltimore was left without a football team. A lot of fans were hurt during that time. I will never forget, like I said earlier, I was talking to this elderly gentleman, right? And he was from Baltimore. I said, well, at first I said, I think he said, I forgot how that conversation started. He said, I'm a Ravens fan. I said, were you from Baltimore? He said, yeah. I said, can I ask you something? I said, are you still hurt the fact that the Colts left town? He said, yup. Yup. And that is why Baltimore fans dislike Robert Ursay. They're still hurt. I would be hurt too. Long as that football team been in that city, and not only that, that was like family. They were part of that city for good. Well, they did win one Super Bowl in Baltimore, but that Super Bowl belongs to Baltimore. And not only that, I believe I did hear they said that Johnny Unitas, if he gets a statue of him, he said he wants it in Baltimore because he played with the Baltimore Colts, not the Indianapolis Colts. Well, the Colts will remain in Baltimore. Sorry. The Colts will remain in Indianapolis since 1984. They actually won one Super Bowl, but that was for Indianapolis. So, yeah. That's why, to me, this is the most controversial move of all time. The way how they did it, and then fans were so hurt, they cried. I would cry too. Yeah. Yeah. Another team, oh boy, that relocate is the St. Louis Cardinals to the city of Phoenix. Now, yes, the Cardinals are another team that relocate. Well, like I said, they will relocate to the city of Phoenix in 1988. The reason why they will relocate is because they had some financial reasons and to play in a better stadium. If you think about it, yeah, I'm going to be honest with you. The stadium that they played in was horrible when they were in St. Louis. When they moved to Phoenix, that stadium, I forgot the name of it, let me know, leave a comment, was actually a better stadium. That is until the year 2006, where they would have the State Farm Stadium, which is a wonderful stadium. I like it. It's retractable. And the field is natural grass. It'll roll in. But that would be until the year 1994, where they would change their name from the Phoenix Cardinals to the Arizona Cardinals. And not only that, the Cardinals will remain in Arizona or Phoenix since 1988. Now, are they going to relocate again? I don't think so. I think they really going to stay there this time. But yeah, that was the last time that the Cardinals would relocate to another city. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Mm-hmm. Another team that relocated is, oh boy, the Los Angeles Rams to the city of St. Louis. Now, believe it or not, you had one football team in St. Louis, they left, and now you got another football team in St. Louis. Well, the Rams would play in St. Louis in the year of 1995. Now, believe it or not, the reason why they moved to St. Louis is because they had some financial problems. And not only that, the stadium that they used to play in definitely was outdated. They used to play in the LA Coliseum. Yeah, they used to play in the LA Coliseum. Then I believe they moved to another stadium in Anaheim. The California's huge. So Los Angeles, Anaheim, yeah, that stadium was outdated. So they wanted to play in a new stadium. I guess the owner tried to get a new stadium. No deal was done. So they were moved to St. Louis. Now, believe it or not, the St. Louis Rams actually won Super Bowl 34. Well, that Super Bowl championship belongs to St. Louis because they were from St. Louis. They will make the playoffs again quite a few times, as I should say. But what I really meant to say was they would make Super Bowl 36, which they lost to the New England Patriots. I'm not going to go into there because that's a lot of hearsay going on. But I think we all know what we're talking about when we hear that. Well, they would actually make the playoffs quite a few times since they played in St. Louis. But the last time the Rams, well, St. Louis Rams were in the playoffs was in the year 2004. Yeah, 2004. That's a very long time. Well, yeah, they actually played in the dome. So yeah, yeah, the greatest show on turf. The greatest show on turf. They wasn't the greatest show on turf after everybody left, so we're just gonna leave it at that. So yeah, we're gonna talk about the Rams a little later. Yeah, talk about the Rams a little later. Another team that relocated is, oh boy. Now, to me, this is the second controversial move of all time. Relocation move. And believe it or not, fans were hurt. And that is the Cleveland Browns will relocate to the city of Baltimore. Now, believe it or not, the Browns were actually founded, I believe, in 1946, if I'm not mistaken. The Browns were the team in the 1940s and 50s, even the 60s. They had Paul Brown, Otto Graham, Marion Motley, and then later on they would have Jim Brown. Well, the last time they would win this NFL championship, I shouldn't say Super Bowl, 1964. Well, to be honest with you, things kind of went downhill since Jim Brown retired. I mean, they did appear in a couple NFL championships, but they lost them. So yeah, then the Browns were horrible in the 1970s, and then the 80s they made it. Ooh, excuse me, that was a bug. They made it to three AFC championships, which they lost. But a lot of Browns fans were hurt when Art Modell fired Paul Brown. Art Modell, boy. Well, the reason why they moved is because Art Modell actually wanted a new stadium for the Cleveland Browns. Well, I guess the city of Cleveland wasn't working with him. So he actually got other deals from different cities. Well, 1995, it would all come to an end. The original Browns, old school Cleveland Browns, that would be the last year in Cleveland. And then the next year, they would move to the city of Baltimore and they became the Baltimore Ravens. Cleveland fans were hurt. You hear me? They were hurt. And not only that they were hurt, like I said, that's old school football. That's old school Cleveland. Well, when they moved to Baltimore, what happened? 4 years later, since they came into the league, the Baltimore Ravens won the Super Bowl. I know a lot of Brown fans were looking like, what did just happen? Well, in 1999, the city of Cleveland would be granted back a football team, and they would be the Cleveland Browns. And believe it or not, when they came back in 1999, their first game, they got blown out by the Pittsburgh Steelers, 43-0. So yeah, that yeah, poor Cleveland Browns fan. Oh boy, oh boy. And then they had so many quarterbacks after Tim Couch. I mean, the list goes on and on and on and on. To me, their best quarterback was Baker Mayfield till they drove him out of town. So, yeah. And believe it or not, in 2012, the Baltimore Ravens will win another Super Bowl. So, I believe a lot of Browns fans still to this day dislike Art Modell, the way how he did Cleveland. I think if you mention his name, I think they're going to curse you out or they're going to boo. So, yeah, yeah. Poor Cleveland Browns fans. You guys are, oh, good. Whew, yeah. Another team that we relocate. The Los Angeles Raiders back to Oakland, the city of Oakland. They were moved back to Oakland in 1995. The reason why they moved back to Oakland is because Al Davis was dissatisfied with the LA Coliseum. Like I said, the LA Coliseum is one of the oldest stadiums in the world. I believe it's over 100 years old. And not only that, it doesn't do football. I believe they do the Olympics too. So, yeah, well, I'm just going to leave it at that. Well, that would be the last team that would play in the city of LA. LA lost one team, then they would gain another. Well, actually, no. The Rams and Raiders actually played in LA at the same time. Well, the Rams left, Raiders left. LA was out of a football team for quite some time, which is quite shocking because the city of LA is the biggest city in America. Well, we're going to talk about the Raiders and Rams a little later. Yeah. Yeah. Another team that relocated to me, which is the third, well, yeah, it's a controversial move. The Houston Oilers to the city, well, they would temporarily move to Memphis, but they would move to the city of Nashville with a. The Houston Oilers were founded in 1960. They actually won two AFL championships, 1960 and 1961. And not only that, they were the first NFL team to ever have a dome, the Astrodome. And believe it or not, I think the Astrodome is still standing to this day, which is quite shocking. Yeah. So, well, owner Bud Adams later on wanted a new stadium. Well, before I go there, the Houston Oilers, they never won a Super Bowl, okay? But they did make it to back-to-back AFC championships, which, of course, they lost. And then, of course, they lost quite a few playoff games, especially the playoff game against the Buffalo Bills. They had a 38-3 lead, and the Bills came back and won the game, which is, yeah, oh, man. Yeah. Then, of course, in 1993, that's when they had their biggest team collapse, which is crazy. Yeah, crazy. Well, like I said, owner Bud Adams wanted to buy a new stadium or try to renovate it. I guess the city of Houston didn't come up with a new deal, so he was getting offers from different cities. Well, in 1996, that would be the last year for the Houston Oilers because they will relocate to Nashville, well, Memphis, temporarily for 1997. Then they will relocate to the city of Nashville, where they still were the Tennessee Oilers. That is until 1999, where they would change their name to the Tennessee Titans. They did make one Super Bowl, which they lost to the St. Louis Rams, and they've been to, I believe, 3 AFC championships, if I'm not mistaken, but they lost all of them. They don't have a Super Bowl. Well, a lot of Houston fans were highly upset because they lost their football team. And not only that, Houston Oilers history should belong in the city of Houston. That is until the year 1999, where the city of Houston was granted a new football team, the Houston Texans. But the Texans wouldn't debut in the NFL until 2002 because they had to get a new stadium. And not only that, they probably had to get their new uniforms. I believe the Houston Texans were the first team to have a retractable stadium. I actually like their stadium. And to me, the Houston Texans are a better team than the Tennessee Titans. I actually could see the Houston Texans win a Super Bowl before the Titans do. So, And not only that, I think a lot of Houston fans are more satisfied with the Texans more so than the Oilers or the Titans. Of course, that is definitely a rivalry between those two. And of course, whenever the Colts come to the city of Baltimore, they get booed. Yes, they do. Yes, they do. Mm, 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 mm. Now, the last three on the list are your three most recent relocations. Now, this team would be the St. Louis Rams back to the city of Los Angeles. The St. Louis Rams will relocate to the city of LA in 2016. And believe it or not, the reason why they moved back to LA is because of financial reasons. And not only that, to play in a bigger market and for a new stadium. Now, everybody knows that the city of LA is a way bigger city than the city of St. Louis. Well, they wouldn't play in their new stadium until 2020, so they would just have to play in the old LA Coliseum. Now, believe it or not, like I said, the last time the St. Louis Rams were in the playoffs was 2004. Well, since the Rams moved back to LA, they made it to the playoffs quite a few times. I said two times, quite a few times. And not only that, they would make two Super Bowl appearances, which they lost one, but they won Super Bowl 56. So Super Bowl 34 belongs to St. Louis and Super Bowl 56 belongs to LA. So yeah, we're just going to leave it at that. But there's two Super Bowls for the Rams. So yeah. Well, in 2020, the Rams would debut in their new stadium, SoFi Stadium, which is one of the most expensive stadiums in the NFL. It's huge. So yeah, yeah. Just going to leave it at that. Just going to leave it at that. Another team that relocated, which is quite questionable, and everybody is still talking about this to this day. The San Diego Chargers to the city of Los Angeles. Now, like I said earlier on the list, the Chargers used to play in LA, which they played for 1 year. Then they relocated to San Diego, which they've been in San Diego since 1961. Well, that is until the year 2017 the Chargers will relocate to LA. The reason why they relocated is because of failure to secure a new stadium. Now, the stadium that the Chargers played in San Diego, it was outdated. It was old. The seats were messed up. Well, I guess the city of San Diego didn't come up with the deal with the owner of the Chargers, so I guess he said, "Okay, well, I got something for y'all. I'm moving the team to LA," which he did. But they played in a different stadium. And believe it or not, whenever they have home games, a lot of teams, well, their opponents' fans would take over that stadium. Yeah, yeah. That is until the year 2020, which they share the same stadium with the LA Rams. You know, believe it or not, there are four teams in the NFL that share a stadium together. You have the LA Rams and the LA Chargers, and then you have the New York Jets and the New York Giants. So, yeah, well, the Giants and Jets play in New Jersey. Well, that probably be another video we may or may not do. I don't know. I'm just saying, but yeah. So they do play in the same stadium, SoFi Stadium, but a lot of people kept saying, what was the reason for them to move to LA? I mean, LA already has enough team. They got the Rams. I mean, the Rams are way better than the Chargers. But do you think it's a possibility that the Chargers will move back to San Diego with a new stadium? Leave a comment and let me know. Leave a comment and let me know. Now, the last team that would relocate, which is the most recent relocation, is the Oakland Raiders to the city of Las Vegas. Las Vegas, yeah. Now, when the Raiders moved back to LA, or should I say Oakland, there's so much going on. Oakland, LA, yeah. Well, when the Raiders moved back to Oakland, they will remain there from 1995 to 2019. The reason why they moved or relocated is because there was no new stadium in Oakland. Like I said, the Oakland Coliseum is a old an outdated stadium in the NFL. Well, one of. And not only that, they share a stadium, well, the stadium, with the athletics, the baseball team, which they used to do back then. But during this time, they were still the only two that would share the same stadium. But we just leave it at that because the athletics are relocating to Las Vegas. If you think about it, Las Vegas is a bigger city than Oakland. Yeah, it is. And not only that, I mean, if you think about it, Las Vegas has the Golden Knights hockey team, which they won a Stanley Cup. They actually went to the Stanley Cup their first year in the league, but they lost it though. But they would go back and win it. Then they have a WNBA team, which they won their third WNBA Finals championship with like in 3 or 4 years. That's a dynasty. Then, from what I'm hearing, of course, the athletics baseball team is moving to Las Vegas. Right now, they're playing in Sacramento, so they're going to be moving there in 2028. For a new stadium. It takes a while, but I heard that they're supposed to be getting a basketball team too, professional basketball, men's basketball, of course, NBA. Well, then the Raiders are there, and believe it or not, fans were unable to see the new stadium in 2020 because it was during the 2020 COVID-19 pandemic. 2020 was a messed up year. I'm gonna just leave it at that, and it got some history. So that is your most recent NFL team that relocate. Now, are there going to be more NFL teams that relocate? Who knows? But are we going to get some more NFL expansion team? Who knows? We're just waiting. But there you go. These are your NFL teams that relocated. Yeah, like I said, the reason why they relocate is because of financial reasons. Try to get a new stadium, no deals, larger markets with bigger cities, and yeah, that's the reason why. I mean, it is a hurtful piece when you see a team leave, but some things are the some teams are some things are for the better. I don't know what's going on, but yeah, some things are for the better. Now, before we go off, before we end this episode, I'm gonna need everybody to hit that subscribe button, hit that thumbs up, leave a comment, and hit that notification button. Leave a comment if you think there are going to be more NFL teams that are going to be relocating or more expansions. NFL teams expansions. You know what I'm saying. So, this is the end of this episode. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for watching. Have a great night. Stay safe. Go Birds. And be prepared for another episode of the Young Brother Soul Podcast Show. Thank you. Good night.